The chair on this porch has rocked 5 generations to sleep, and rocked 2 of them out of this world. It came west in the back of a wagon in 1889, wrapped in a quilt so the joints wouldn't crack in the cold. A great-grandmother nursed 6 children in it, one after another, through 4 different houses. A great-grandfather sat in it every evening for 11 years after his wife passed, not talking to anyone, just rocking, and everyone in the family understood, without being told, not to ask him to stop. It has been repaired 4 times. The left armrest is a slightly different wood than the right, because in 1954, a boy broke it wrestling with his brother, and his father wouldn't buy a new chair. He just fixed the one they had. That chair has held a woman in labor, breathing through contractions because the midwife said the rocking helped. It has held a man dying, slowly, on a summer evening, surrounded by people who didn't say much because there wasn't much left to say. It has held babies, and it has held grief. And mostly, for 130 years, it has just held people who needed somewhere to sit and not be rushed. Nobody in most homes today owns a chair like that. We have chairs. We have a lot of them, actually. More seating per household than any generation in history. But almost none of it is built to hold weight the way that chair held weight. None of it is built to last long enough, or to stay put long enough, to become the place 5 generations of the same family instinctively went when they needed to think, or grieve, or just be still. This is the story of what that chair actually did, and the forgotten art it protected, that we've almost entirely lost. Part 1. The chair as a place to be still. For most of American history, a family kept one good chair, sometimes 2, built specifically to rock. Not for children, for adults. It sat by the fire in winter and on the porch in summer, and it was, more often than not, occupied by whoever in the household needed to think something through. This wasn't leisure furniture. It was thinking furniture. A mother worried about a sick child rocked. A father working out how to make the mortgage payment rocked. A widow, in the year after her husband died, rocked every evening at the same hour, and her children learned to let her be. The motion itself did something, steady, rhythmic, requiring just enough of the body's attention to keep the mind from spiraling, but not so much that a person couldn't sit there for an hour doing absolutely nothing else. And that's really the heart of it. The rocking chair gave people permission to do nothing else. In a life with no shortage of work, mending, chores, the endless upkeep of a house and a farm and a family, sitting in that chair was one of the only sanctioned ways to simply stop. Nobody asked what you were doing in the rocking chair. It was understood. You were thinking. You were resting. You were, in some quiet way, tending to yourself, in full view of everyone, without having to explain it. Children grew up watching their parents do this. They grew up understanding that stillness wasn't laziness. It was maintenance. And when their turn came, they sat in the same chair and did the same nothing. And somehow it helped them too. Part 2. The discipline the chair taught. The rocking chair carried an unspoken discipline, the same way the kitchen table did. Rules nobody wrote down, that everybody somehow knew. You didn't interrupt someone in the chair unless it mattered. If your father was rocking after supper, you let him rock. If your grandmother sat there after church with her eyes closed, you walked past quietly. The chair marked a kind of private time, taking place in a public room, and the whole family respected the boundary without ever naming it. You didn't rock to entertain yourself. There was no book most nights, no radio, at least not at first. The rocking itself was the whole activity, the small, repetitive motion that let a mind wander somewhere useful instead of somewhere anxious. People today pay for meditation apps to relearn something a 50-cent chair used to do for free every evening just by sitting in it. And this is the part almost nobody remembers. You took turns. In houses with only one good rocking chair, there was an order to who sat in it and when. The oldest person in the room usually had first claim in the evening. A pregnant woman got it without having to ask. A child who'd had a hard day might be quietly nodded toward it by a parent who noticed before the child even knew they needed it. The chair moved around the family based on who was carrying the most that week. A kind of silent triage nobody had to administer because everyone had learned by watching to notice who needed to sit still. That noticing was the real discipline, not the rocking, the paying attention to who, on any given evening, looked like they needed the chair more than you did. Part 3. What replaced it? So what happened to the chair? Again, not one dramatic loss, a slow trade made in 1,000 small, reasonable decisions. Furniture changed first. The recliner arrived, built for watching television rather than for thinking. A chair designed to face a screen instead of a room, to fully support the body instead of asking anything of it, even the small effort of a push against the floor. It was, by every practical measure, more comfortable. It was also, without anyone quite deciding this, a chair built for absorbing entertainment instead of a chair built for sitting with your own thoughts. Houses got bigger, and bedrooms multiplied, and the porch, where a lot of that rocking used to happen, in view of the street, in view of the family, slowly stopped being where people sat in the evening. Air conditioning meant you didn't have to go outside to cool off after supper. Screens meant you didn't have to go anywhere at all. And stillness itself started to feel unproductive. A person sitting quietly, doing nothing, rocking gently and staring at nothing in particular, began to look, to themselves mostly, like they were wasting time. Better to scroll. Better to half-watch something. Better to at least be doing something, even if that something left you more tired than the nothing ever did. Nobody decided to stop being still. They just kept finding faster, louder, more stimulating ways to fill the exact hour that stillness used to occupy, until stillness itself started to feel like a skill nobody had practiced in years, because, in a way, nobody had. Part 4. What we actually lost. Here's what's strange about losing the art of sitting still. It doesn't announce itself. You don't wake up one day and think, I no longer know how to be quiet with my own thoughts. You just notice, gradually, that silence has started to feel uncomfortable. That a quiet evening with nothing to do makes you reach for your phone within about 90 seconds. That you can't remember the last time you sat somewhere for an hour doing genuinely nothing, on purpose, without it feeling like you were falling behind on something. The rocking chair didn't require anyone to be more disciplined or more mindful. It just gave stillness a place to happen, a shape it was allowed to take, and a family culture that treated it as normal rather than strange. You didn't have to justify sitting in it. It was simply where you went. We've replaced that with almost nothing that does the same job. Therapy helps, for those who have it. A walk helps, for those who take it. But most modern rest doesn't actually rest anything. It's consumption dressed up as relaxation, a screen swapped for a screen. Very little of it asks nothing of us the way that chair asked nothing of us. Very little of it exists purely so a person can sit, unbothered, and let their mind settle on its own. What we lost wasn't the furniture. It was a sanctioned, visible, ordinary place to be still. One that didn't need explaining, that the whole family understood and protected, and that quietly taught every person who sat in it that stopping wasn't the same as failing. Part 5. What the chair knew. The families who never fully lost this didn't do anything complicated. They just kept a chair. One chair, usually old, usually a little worn, and they kept the habit of using it for nothing in particular. Not scrolling in it, not eating in it, just sitting, some evenings, and rocking, and letting the mind do whatever it needed to do. That's the whole secret. And like the table before it, it's almost disappointingly simple. Protect one ordinary hour in one ordinary chair for doing nothing at all, and let the people around you understand that this is not idleness, but upkeep. The rocking chair from 1889 is still on that porch. The family that has it now doesn't sit in it every night. Nobody's pretending they do. But on Sunday evenings, somebody usually ends up there, phone left inside, just rocking for a while before supper, the way 5 generations of the same family did before them, for reasons none of them ever had to explain out loud. It looks like almost nothing from the outside. An old chair, a slow creak, a person doing nothing. But it was never really about the chair. It was about protecting a place where a person was allowed to stop, be still, and just be carried, gently, back and forth, until whatever was heavy enough to bring them there felt a little lighter. That's what the chair knew, that we've mostly forgotten. It's not too late to relearn it. It just takes a chair, an hour, and the willingness to sit in it and do nothing at all. Part 6. The chair nobody built like that anymore. Somewhere around the middle of the last century, something quieter than the recliner's arrival happened too. Chairs stopped being built to last. The 1889 chair was made by a man who assumed his grandchildren would sit in it. You can tell by the joinery, mortise and tenon, pinned with a wooden dowel instead of a nail, because nails work loose after enough winters and dowels swell tighter with the damp. You can tell by the wood itself, a single slab of oak steamed and bent slowly over weeks, not weeks of assembly line pressing. Furniture like that cost a man real money and real time, and he built it the way he built a barn, for people who hadn't been born yet. Nobody builds a rocking chair like that on purpose anymore, and it's not because the skill vanished. It's because the economics of a house stopped assuming permanence. Furniture became something you replaced every decade as your taste, or your life changed, not something you handed down. A chair meant to last 5 generations doesn't sell particularly well in a culture that moves every 7 years, redecorates every 5, and increasingly rents the couch along with the apartment. This matters more than it sounds like it should, because a chair that isn't built to outlast you can't hold the same kind of memory. Nobody tells stories about the particle board recliner from the outlet store. It doesn't have a repaired armrest with a story behind the mismatched wood. It doesn't smell like 11 winters of wood smoke and 1 grandmother's hand lotion. It gets replaced before it has the chance to become anything at all. And a house full of furniture that never becomes anything is a house that, generation after generation, has to start its stillness completely from scratch. Part 7. Trying to get it back. Here's the encouraging part. The chair itself was never really the point, which means the loss isn't as permanent as it looks. A few families, without ever calling it a practice or giving it a name, have simply started doing the old thing again. Not with an antique. Most people don't have one lying around, and buying a 100-year-old rocking chair on the internet to solve a problem like this would rather miss the point. They've done it with whatever chair happened to be sitting on the porch already, or the one nobody wanted in the living room, or a folding chair dragged out back after supper. The chair was never magic. It was just furniture that had been assigned a job, and the job was the part worth keeping. What these families tend to describe when you ask them isn't a ritual so much as a small, stubborn refusal. One rule, usually: no phone in that chair. Sometimes a second rule. Whoever looks like they've had the hardest day gets it first. The same silent triage the old houses used to run without a word being spoken. That's really all it takes to rebuild the thing that took 130 years to build the first time, because the thing was never the wood. It was the permission. The harder part, people say, isn't remembering to sit down. It's sitting there for the first 10 minutes without reaching for something to fill them. The itch to check a phone, to turn on a show, to at least be productive about resting. That itch doesn't go away just because you've decided to be still. It takes a few evenings, sometimes a few weeks, before the rocking starts doing what it used to do, before the mind stops flinching at the quiet and starts, slowly, using it. Nobody's grandchildren are going to inherit a porch chair from a big box store and treat it like an heirloom. That's fine. The chair was never supposed to be the inheritance. What's supposed to get passed down is smaller and harder to photograph. A family that still knows an hour of doing nothing isn't wasted and still notices without being told. Who needs the chair tonight more than you do? That's the part that was always portable. It never needed the oak. It just needed somebody willing to sit down first and let everyone else remember how. Part 8. What the chair will teach next. There's a version of this story that ends here, tidy and a little sentimental. The chair reclaimed, the lesson relearned, everyone home in time for supper. But the truth is, the chair was never finished teaching. Each generation that sat in it learned something slightly different, because they arrived carrying different weights. The great-grandmother nursing 6 children learned that stillness could coexist with exhaustion, that you didn't have to be rested to be still, only willing. The widower rocking alone for 11 years learned something harder, that some grief doesn't get talked through, only sat through, one evening at a time, for as long as it takes. The boy who broke the armrest, years later as a grown man, probably learned the smallest lesson of all, that a thing doesn't have to be perfect to keep doing its job. A repaired chair rocks just as well as a whole one. Maybe it rocks better, having proven it can survive being broken. What will it teach the generation just starting to rebuild the habit on porches with chairs that came from a warehouse instead of a wagon? Probably not patience with permanence. That lesson belonged to a slower century. More likely, something suited to this one. How to be still in a world that has gotten extremely good at making stillness feel like falling behind. That's a harder discipline than any the chair taught before, because for the first time, the distractions fit in a pocket and go wherever the chair goes. Maybe that's the real reason to keep sitting in it. Not to honor the past, and not even really for the rest itself, but because every generation that used the chair correctly left it a little more trustworthy for the next one. Proof, sat into the wood, that the people before you also had hard evenings and also just sat there, rocking, until it passed. A child who grows up watching that isn't just learning to be still. They're learning that stillness has always worked for everyone who came before them, which is its own kind of quiet reassurance on the nights when it doesn't feel like it will. The chair doesn't know any of this, of course. It's oak and a curved runner, and 130 years of names nobody wrote down. But sit in it long enough, on a slow enough evening, and it's easy to believe it remembers everyone who ever needed it, and is simply waiting, patiently, for whoever's turn is next. The chair is still there. It always is. Yours, someone else's, the one on the porch you haven't sat in all summer. It doesn't need to be 130 years old to start working. It just needs someone to sit down first. Tell us about the chair in your family, the one with the story, the mismatched armrest, the hour it was never asked about. We want to hear it. And if you don't want these small, ordinary pieces of American life to disappear without anyone noticing, subscribe. We dig one of these up every week.